The mayor of Miami Beach, a Democrat, is calling on President Biden to call off all the federal prosecutions against Donald Trump, essentially a preemptive pardon for the good of the country. Miami Beach Mayor Dan Gelber, a Democrat and former federal prosecutor who'll be joining us in a moment, wrote a piece in the Miami Herald over the weekend explaining why he thinks the former president should be pardoned, even though he thinks Donald Trump is likely guilty of every charge against him and that the charges are serious. He said, quote, "In mature democracies, the decision of the party in power to prosecute and jail the leader of the opposition is fraught with peril, no matter the obviousness of guilt. In a nation whose greatest challenge is the depth and intensity of its divisions, such a spectacle might be something from which we cannot recover." He went on to say Donald Trump is, for all effective purposes, the opposition leader. He's wildly popular in the Republican Party. Its former nominee, and absent an intervening health crisis or unforeseen act, will be its nominee again. Joining me now is Miami Beach Mayor, Democrat Dan Gelber. Mayor, thanks very much for taking the time. Appreciate it. So I've been thinking about this issue a lot as well. Why do you think that he should pardon or drop these charges against Trump?
Well, I think these are federal charges, obviously. The state charges really are not something he can impact. But like, I think your lens has to be, for me, it's what's best for the country, not just trying to see that somebody who committed these crimes obviously needs to be in jail. I think that Donald Trump has been the most divisive factor in this country in my lifetime. And I think the great challenge facing our country is its divisions. And the idea that we're going to spend the next 2 years really watching this spectacle, our country's not going to be able to look away from it. And the truth of the matter is, I think we'll end up even more divided and even more weakened because of it. So for me, it's just a question of what's your lens. My lens is, I don't think we could really withstand this spectacle for years to come.
Do you think that he should be tried and, if convicted, then commute the sentence, or just literally just drop all of the investigations right now?
Well, look, what happened in Watergate, which, by the way, if you think about Watergate, that was a time when, we all believed Walter Cronkite, right? And we all believed that there was one truth. Now we're in a country that's so divided, and in Watergate, they decided to Ford preemptively pardoned the President Nixon. I don't think that's critical, by the way. I think that the Biden administration should be thinking about this right now, because I just think if you play this game forward, imagine what it's going to be like when you've got Donald Trump, who I think wanted to be indicted in some of these cases, I felt like, really going through this, and the country just becoming more and more entrenched in its divisions. I think this is an unhealthy thing, frankly. But I understand that maybe there's a better route. Maybe we let some of this go forward. Although I think the Georgia and Manhattan cases will go forward no matter what anyway. So there's going to be a lot of Donald Trump in court over the next 2 years anyway.
Are you getting a lot of blowback from fellow Democrats for saying this?
Other than my daughters?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I have. Look, there's a lot of people, their lens is, hey, I want to see that guy in jail tomorrow. He's committed crimes. He should be in jail, and we need the rule of law to be vindicated, and he tried to destroy the democracy. The question, though, is what is going to happen if that happens? In other words, the pardon power is the rule of law also. So it's not exactly like he's away from it. But I think people have to really step back and think about what this country is going to feel like when Donald Trump is going through all of these federal trials, by the way, which are the opposition party. I think there is a difference between a state action, like in Fulton County, Georgia, and federal actions. Federal actions are from essentially an administration that he's going to be the nominee against. So I think it has a feel that's just decidedly different. But I just think that I used to think that Al-Qaeda, a nuclear bomb, or Russia were our biggest concerns for security. I think these days the divisions within our own country have become the greatest challenges to us. And I don't see how these kinds of trials are going to, do anything other than exacerbate the vortex this country is in right now. So this is something that ought to be thought about, whether it's immediate, preemptory, or whether it's after a trial or at some other point. I don't know how we withstand this, given the fragile nature of our democracy these days.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.